This lesson discusses handling cookies. The topics include: what is a cookie? What is a good tool to view cookie information? Why do you need cookies in a website? What kind of information should go into the cookie? How do you send a cookie from PHP to the browser? How do you read cookie data from the browser in PHP? Why is the cookie always off by one cycle? And how do you get rid of a cookie? First of all, what is a cookie? A cookie is information which is stored by the browser. The information that goes into the cookie should be very simple, and it is usually in the form of a very small or simple string or a numerical value. Oftentimes, what is stored in the cookie is simply an identifier. One of the best tools to view cookie information on your browser is to use the Google Chrome browser. You would go to chrome.google.com, click on Download, and follow the very simple installation instructions. Looking now to our first code example, the way to set the cookie in PHP is using the setCookie command. The parameters include the name of the cookie, the value, the expiration, which is in the form of a timestamp, and the path. It's important to recognize that the expiration must be set to some time in the future. Otherwise, the browser will assume that the cookie is no longer valid and it will be removed. In this example, on line 6, we're setting the timestamp to 3,600 seconds into the future, which represents a total lifetime of 1 hour. On line 8, we used the setCookie command to set the cookie information. The name of the cookie will be info. The information contained in the cookie, or the value, will simply be cookie info. The expiration will be the timestamp that was set on line 6, and the path is oftentimes tied to a directory structure or folder within your website. If you are unsure of which folder to use, just simply indicate /. On line 17, inside a normal HTML document, we use the PHP info command with the argument info_variables to be able to view cookie information. Moving now to the Google Chrome browser, we're going to click on the top right, Customize and Control Google Chrome. We are then going to select Tools. Underneath Tools, we are then going to select Developer Tools. This brings up a console which allows us to view various pieces of information. The Network category allows us to view incoming header information. The Resources category allows us to view things such as database connections, storage information, and cookies. As you can see, currently there are no cookies set on this particular host. The cookie information is tied to the domain of your website. The browser presents cookies only from the domain in which it is requesting. Accordingly, your application will be unable to view cookies that are set from other domains. This is for security reasons, so that one website, for example, could not spy upon another website. Looking now to our first code example, we click on this. You'll notice now that we made the request to the server. At this time, our browser had no cookies for that domain to present. So inside PHP, we are not able to see the cookie information. However, because we set the cookie, you'll notice now Google Chrome informs us that we have a cookie whose name is info, whose value is cookie info, the domain is localhost, the path is /, and the expiration again is in the form of a timestamp, and it is set to the future. Looking now at the Network category, you can see the original request that we made. The request headers are what was sent from our browser to the web application. Looking a little bit further down the list, you can see the response coming back includes the setCookie header, which was set by the setCookie command. Now, if we refresh the page, going back to Resources, we refresh the page, you'll notice that now we can see the cookie information from our application. It is in the form of a key within the $_cookie superglobal. You'll notice if we go back to Network that in this case, because we had a cookie for the local domain, this information was present within the information that's sent from the browser back to the server. Looking now at the second code example, in order to read cookie information, we look at the superglobal $_cookie. The key in the associative array represents the name of the cookie, in this case, info. It's important to recognize that because the cookie is stored locally on the browser, the information could be tampered with or modified. Accordingly, it needs to be treated very carefully. On line 7, we use the strip tags command to strip out any potentially malicious tags. On line 17, when we are displaying the value originating from the cookie, we wrap it in the HTML special characters function in order to safeguard ourselves against potentially executable code contained within the cookie. Looking now to the browser, we have a look at the second code example. As you can see, we can now see the cookie information because it has been set. And again, looking at the resources, the cookie information is, the name is info, the value is cookie info. You'll notice that the spaces are represented as plus signs. Looking now to the third code example, in order to remove a cookie, you would use the set cookie command. However, the timestamp will be set to some point in the past. Accordingly, on line 6, we take the current timestamp and subtract 3,600 seconds, which is 1 hour into the past. On line 9, we set the cookie using the same name and the same path, which is important for identification purposes. The value is set to 0 as it's unimportant because we know that the cookie will be removed. The expiration is set to a timestamp which is in the past. So going back to the browser, let's execute the third code example. So as you can see, in the local browser, the cookie has been removed. However, you'll notice in the PHP info screen, we still see the cookie information. The reason for this is that when we made the original request from the browser to the web server, the original request included any cookie information which was present at that time. As you will recall, originally we had a cookie called info with a value of cookie info. This was presented to the PHP application, and it was stored in the $_cookie superglobal. However, if we refresh the page, you'll notice that we no longer see the cookie information in the PHP info screen. Moving now to the fourth code example, let's examine the principle that cookie information is always going to be one-off. First of all, on line 6, we check to see if a cookie count has been set. If so, we assign the value to a variable $count, and we force the value to an int for safety purposes. As you will recall, by forcing something to integer, any other information, such as string information or potentially malicious code, will be automatically removed. On line 9, we check to see if there's a URL parameter inc, which has been set. We use $_get to obtain that information. If so, we increment the count. Otherwise, we decrement. If the cookie count has not been set at all, we set the count to 0. On line 20, we use the set cookie command to initialize the cookie count, the current value of the count, timestamp in the future so that the cookie remains valid, and again, the default path, which is simply /. We then display the value as currently set. We also display the value which is coming in using PHP info. Moving now to the browser, let's execute the fourth code example. So you notice that the initial value is 0. We see this on the screen. We display our value, which was currently set. In the browser, you can see that the browser now sees that there's a cookie called count with a value of 0. However, in the PHP info screen, you'll notice that there is no value representing the cookie. If we then increment the cookie, the new value is 1. We see that there's a URL parameter called inc. As you can see at the top in the URL, inc has been set. The cookie count, however, is 0, which was the preceding value. So the current value is 1, but the value that we were first informed of was 0. Now, if we continue to increment, you'll notice that the outbound value is 4. However, the inbound value is 3. Likewise, if we decrement the cookie, the current value is always going to be 1 off from the value that we recognize in the PHP program. And again, the reason for this is that when the browser makes the request, it presents the current cookie information. In this case, it was 4. We incremented it to 5 and set that in the browser. But as far as the PHP program is aware, the value of the cookie is still the original value. We will not find the new value until the next cycle. So as you can see, original value 5, new value 6. Original value 6, new value is 7, etc. In review, what is a cookie? A cookie has a name and represents a piece of information set in the header and stored by the user's browser. What is a good tool to view cookie information? Use the Google Chrome browser, click on the top right, Customize and Control, select Tools, Developer Tools, and Resources in order to view cookies. Why do you need cookies in a website? Cookies are needed to provide basic identification. The next time the user comes back to visit your website, the browser will automatically present whatever cookies are available for your particular domain. What kind of information should go into the cookie? A bare minimum amount of information. The reason is that the cookie information is stored on the user's browser or phone and is therefore not considered secure. Usually the information is some sort of identifier. How do you send a cookie from PHP to the customer's browser? You use the setCookie command. How do you read cookie data from the browser in PHP? You would look inside the $_cookie superglobal. The key represents the name of the cookie. Why is the cookie always off by 1 cycle? The first time somebody visits your website, the cookie's not set. When you set the cookie, the information is stored on the browser, but your application is not aware of the cookie information until it's presented again in the next request cycle. Therefore, the cookie data will always be off by 1 cycle. How do you get rid of a cookie? You use the setCookie command, but you set the expiration time, which is in the form of a timestamp, to some time in the past. This concludes our discussion of handling cookies.